and the Americas from America to the Asian and African continents to confront Putin. Like many of you, I spent countless hours unifying our European allies. We shared with the world in advance what we knew Putin was planning and precisely how he would try to falsify and justify his aggression. We countered Russia's lies with the truth. And now that he's acted, the free world is holding him accountable, along with 27 members of the European Union, including France, Germany, Italy, as well as countries like the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and many others. Even Switzerland are inflicting pain on Russia and supporting the people of Ukraine. Putin is now isolated from the world more than he has ever been.
Sorry y'all jumped in here late. I had work to do and got here as quick as I could.
Together, along with our allies, we are right now enforcing powerful economic sanctions. We're cutting off Russia's largest banks from the international financial system, preventing Russia's central bank from defending the Russian ruble, making Putin's $630 billion war fund worthless. We're choking Russia's access. We're choking Russia's access to technology that will sap its economic strength and weaken its military for years to come. Tonight, I say to the Russian oligarchs and the corrupt leaders who bilked billions of dollars off this violent regime, no more. The United States, I mean it. The United States Department of Justice is assembling a dedicated task force to go after the crimes of the Russian oligarchs. We're joining with European allies to find and seize their yachts, their luxury apartments, their private jets. We're coming for your ill-begotten gains. And tonight, I'm announcing that we will join our allies in closing off American airspace to all Russian flights, further isolating Russia and adding additional squeeze on their economy.
So obviously we've seen him speak a lot on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. I kind of know what to expect. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he's going to respond once he gets through all the Russia and Ukraine stuff to kind of his domestic failures when it comes to all of his different campaign promises and how two senators pretty much have blocked everything.
Alone is the one to blame. Together with our allies, we're providing support to the Ukrainians in their fight for freedom. Military assistance, economic assistance, humanitarian assistance. We're giving more than $1 billion of direct assistance to Ukraine, and will continue to aid the Ukrainian people as they defend their country and help ease their suffering. But let me be clear, our forces are not engaged and will not engage in the conflict with Russian forces in Ukraine. Our forces are not going to Europe to fight Ukraine, but to defend our NATO allies in the event that Putin decides to keep moving west. For that purpose, we have mobilized American ground forces, air squadrons, ship deployments to protect NATO countries, including Poland, Romania, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And as I've made crystal clear, the United States and our allies will defend every inch of territory that is NATO territory with the full force of our collective power. Every single inch. And we're clear-eyed. The Ukrainians are fighting back with pure courage.
I agree with you, 1927, Sue.
Weeks and months will be hard on them. Putin has unleashed violence and chaos. But while he may make gains on the battlefield, he'll pay a continuing high price over the long run. And a pound of Ukrainian people, the proud, proud people, pound for pound, ready to fight with every inch of energy they have. They've known 30 years of independence, have repeatedly shown that they will not tolerate anyone who tries to take their country backwards. To all Americans, I'll be honest with you, as I always promised I would be. A Russian dictator invading a foreign country has cost around the world. And I'm taking robust action to make sure the pain of our sanctions is targeted at the Russian economy and that we use every tool at our disposal to protect American businesses and consumers. Tonight, I can announce the United States has worked with 30 other countries to release 60 million barrels of oil from reserves around the world. America will lead that effort, releasing 30 million barrels of our own strategic petroleum reserve. And we stand ready to do more if necessary, united with our allies. These steps will help blunt gas prices here at home, but I know news about what's happening can seem alarming to all Americans. But I want you to know we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. When the history of this era is written, Putin's war in Ukraine will have left Russia weaker and the rest of the world stronger. While it shouldn't have
State of the Unions are so weird. The fact that they have to keep standing up and clapping like that, and then they're behind him, just so bizarre.
Among leaders of nations, a more unified Europe, a more unified West. We see unity among the people who are gathering in cities and large crowds around the world, even in Russia, to demonstrate their support for the people of Ukraine. In the battle between democracy and autocracies, democracies are rising to the moment, and the world is clearly choosing the side of peace and security. This is the real test, and it's going to take time. So let us continue to draw inspiration from the iron will of the Ukrainian people. To our fellow Ukrainian Americans who forged the deep bond that connects our two nations, we stand with you. We stand with you. Putin may circle Kyiv with tanks, but he'll never gain the hearts and souls of the Iranian people. He'll never extinguish their love of freedom, and he will never weaken the resolve of the free world. We meet tonight in an America that has lived through two of the hardest years this nation has ever faced. The pandemic has been punishing, and so many families are living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to keep up with the rising cost of food, gas, housing, and so much more. I understand, like many of you did. My dad had to leave his home in Scranton, Pennsylvania to find work. So like many of you, I grew up in a family when the price of food went up, it was felt throughout the family. It had an impact. That's when one of the first things I did as president was fight to pass the American Rescue Plan. Because people were hurting, we needed to act, and we did. Few pieces of legislation have done more at a critical moment in our history to lift us out of a crisis. It fueled our efforts to vaccinate the nation and combat COVID-19, delivered immediate economic relief to tens of millions of Americans. It helped put food on the table. Remember those long lines of cars waiting for hours just to get a box of food put in their trunk? It cut the cost of health care insurance. And as my dad used to say, it gave the people just a little bit of breathing room. Unlike the $2 trillion
Why does it look like Nancy Pelosi is looking at us?
That benefited the top 1% of Americans, the American Rescue Plan. The American Rescue Plan helped working people and left no one behind. Folks, and it worked. It worked.
The American Rescue Plan was just good. Like, it was just good. We were in the middle of an economic crisis. It was pretty basic.
We created jobs, lots of jobs. In fact, our economy created over 6.5 million new jobs just last year. More jobs in 1 year than ever before in the history of the United States of America. The economy grew at a rate of 5.7 last year.
There's so much going on right now, and there is a lot to criticize Biden about, but that is something that he's not doing a great job of advertising, but also there's not much talk about in the broader left sphere. And that's that the economy is growing a lot and recovering really well. And like he just mentioned, 5.6 million jobs. He said it, more than any in history in that time span. So you have to give him credit, even though we understand that an economy isn't, completely determined by the president. It isn't even majority determined by the president at all. But
For America.
gotta give him
Invest
credit.
in America. Educate Americans. Grow the workforce. Build the economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down. Because we know. Because when the middle class grows, the poor will way up and the wealthy do very well. America used to have the best roads, bridges, and airports on earth. And now our infrastructure is ranked 13th in the world. We won't be able to compete for the jobs of the 21st century if we don't fix it. That's why it was so important to pass the bipartisan infrastructure law. And I thank my Republican friends for joining to invest and rebuild America, the single biggest investment in history. It was a bipartisan effort, and I want to thank the members of both parties who worked to make it happen. We're done talking about infrastructure weeks. We're now talking about an infrastructure decade. And look,
This is so dumb. How many times we have to stand up?
it's going to transform America,
I agree. Yay.
put us
with
on a path to win the
infrastructure,
economic
but-
competition of the 21st century that we face with the rest of the world, particularly China. I've told Xi Jinping it's never been a good bet to bet against the American people. We'll create good jobs for millions of Americans, modernizing roads,
Ted.
airports, ports, waterways, all across America. And we'll do it to withstand the devastating effects of climate change and promote environmental justice. We'll build a national network of 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations. Begin to replace the poisonous lead pipes so every child, every American has clean water to drink at home and at school. We're going to provide affordable, high-speed internet for every American, rural, suburban, urban, and tribal communities. 4,000 projects have already been announced. Many of you have
Hey,
announced
Scotty.
them in your districts. And tonight,
1927 Sue, I'm reading your
this year,
comments. I just can't read them
we will
all right
start fixing over 65,000 miles of highway and 1,500 bridges in disrepair. And folks,
now. Why is Kamala clapping like this? No, not anymore, but she was earlier. And Nancy, I don't know what the heck's going on with
when
Nancy.
we use taxpayers' dollars to rebuild America, we're going to do it by buying America. Buy American products. Support American jobs. The federal government spends about $600 billion a year to keep this country safe and secure. There's been a law on the books for almost a century to make sure taxpayers' dollars support American jobs and businesses. Every administration, Democrat and Republican, says they'll do it. But we're actually doing it. We'll buy America to make sure everything from the deck of an aircraft carrier to the steel on highway guardrails is made in America from beginning to end. All of it. All of it. But folks, to compete for the jobs of the future, we also need a level playing field with China and other competitors. That's why it's so important to pass the Bipartisan Innovation Act sitting in Congress that will make record investments in emerging technologies and American manufacturing. We used to invest almost 2% of our GDP in research and development. We don't now. China is. Let me give you one example why it's so important to pass. If you travel 20 miles east of Columbus, Ohio, you'll find 1,000 empty acres of land. It won't look like much, but if you stop and look closely, you'll see a field of dreams, the ground on which America's future will be built. That's where Intel, the American company that helped build Silicon Valley, is going to build a $20 billion semiconductor megasite, up to 8 state-of-the-art factories in one place, 10,000 new jobs. And in those factories, the average job about $135,000 a year. Some of the most sophisticated manufacturing in the world to make computer chips the size of a fingertip, that power the world in everyday lives, from smartphones, technology to the internet, technology that's yet to be invented. But that's just the beginning. Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger, who is here tonight, I don't know where Pat is. Pat, there you go, Pat, stand up.
He said stand up.
Pat came to see me, and he told me they're ready to increase their investment from $20 billion to $100 billion. That would be the biggest investment in manufacturing in American history. And all they're waiting for is for you to pass this bill. So let's not wait any longer. Send it to my desk, I'll sign it, and we'll really take off in a big way. And folks,
Kevin McCarthy checking his phone.
Intel is not alone. There's something happening in America. Just look around and you'll see an amazing story. The rebirth of pride that comes from stamping products made in America. The revitalization of American manufacturing. Companies are choosing to build new factories here when just a few years ago they would have gone overseas. That's what's happening. Ford is investing $11 billion in electric vehicles, creating 11,000 jobs across the country. GM is making the largest investment in its history, $7 billion to build electric vehicles, creating 4,000 jobs in Michigan. All told, 369,000 new manufacturing jobs were created in America last year alone. Folks, powered by people I've met like JoJo Burgess from generations of union steelworkers in Pittsburgh, who's here tonight. Where are you, JoJo? There you go. Thanks, buddy. As Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown says, it's time to bury the label Rust Belt. It's time to see
That was not the cheer he was looking for.
What used to be called the Rust Belt become the home of a significant resurgence of manufacturing. And with all the bright spots in our economy, record job growth, higher wages, too many families are struggling to keep up with their bills. Inflation is robbing them of gains they thought otherwise they would be able.
I hate watching Biden speeches a lot of times because I can just pluck out already which clips Fox News is going to play in a montage tomorrow and be like, he couldn't get one sentence together, and then play the clip we just saw where he went off script and stuff like that. Ugh.
So you didn't have people making those beams that went into buildings because they were out. The factory was closed.
Don't go off
The
script.
panic also disrupted the global supply chain.
So bad.
Factories close.
Thank you, Scott.
When that happens, it takes longer to make goods and get them to the warehouses, to the stores, and prices go up. Look at cars last year. 1/3 of all the inflation was because of automobile sales. There weren't enough semiconductors to make all the cars that people wanted to buy. And guess what? Prices of automobiles went way up, especially used vehicles as well. And so we have a choice. One way to fight inflation is to drive down wages and make Americans poorer. I think I have a better idea to fight inflation. Lower your costs, not your wages. Folks,
One of my favorite Biden things is whenever he does that fake whisper. Lower your costs, not your wages.
More goods moving faster and cheaper in America. More jobs where you can earn a good living in America. Instead of relying on foreign supply chains, let's make it in America. Look, economists call this increasing the productive capacity of our economy. I call it building a better America. My plan to fight inflation will lower your costs and lower the deficit. 17 Nobel laureates in economics said my plan will ease long-term inflationary pressures. Top business leaders, and I believe most Americans support the plan. And here's the plan. First, cut the cost of prescription drugs. We pay more for the same drug produced by the same company in America than any other country in the world. Just look at insulin.
Do you guys want to do a drinking game? I am underage, so I'll be drinking my play water. But if you have alcohol at home, do a drinking game with me. Every time he mentions something that he wants to get done, that would... Oh, what is this? What's happening here?
Which means they need insulin every single day.
Just a kid who needs insulin. Okay. Every time he mentions something that he wants to get done or promises to get done or whatever that requires the filibuster to be gotten rid of, we're going to take a drink. Because it just falls under the stuff that's not going to happen.
Imagine what it's like to look at your child who needs insulin to stay healthy and have no idea how in God's name you're going to be able to pay for it. What it does to your family, but what it does to your dignity, your ability to look your child in the eye, to be the parent you expect yourself to be. I really mean to think about that. That's what I think about. You know, yesterday, Joshua's here tonight, but yesterday was his birthday. Happy birthday, buddy, by the way.
He's like a little politician.
For Joshua,
what a mini politician.
and 200,000 other young people with type 1 diabetes, let's cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month. So everyone can afford it. And drug companies will do very, very well, their profit margin. While we're at it,
I don't think he can do that with executive order, so everyone take a drink.
Let's let Medicare negotiate the price of prescription drugs.
Take a drink, that's not getting done because he would need to get rid of the filibuster. Or do it. Can you do the reconciliation? I don't know.
VA drugs. Look, the American Rescue Plan is helping millions of families with Affordable Care Act plans to save them $2,400 a year on their health premiums. Let's close the coverage gap and make these savings permanent. And second, let's cut energy costs for families, an average of $500 a year by combating climate change. Let's provide an investment tax credits to weatherize your home and your business, to be energy efficient and get a tax credit for it. Double America's clean energy production in solar, wind, and so much more. Lower the price of electric vehicles, saving another $80 a month that you're not going to have to pay at the pump. Folks, the third thing we can do to change the standard of living for hardworking folks is cut the cost of child care.
Nancy's like, I know we're getting back up. I'm going to stay up.
Folks, if you live in a major city in America, you pay up to $14,000 a year for child care per child. I was a single dad for 5 years, raising 2 kids. I had a lot of help, though. I had a mom, a dad, a brother, and a sister that really helped. But middle class and working folks shouldn't have to pay more than 7% of their income to care for the young children. My plan My plan would cut the cost of child care in half for most families and help parents, including millions of women who left the workforce during the pandemic because they couldn't afford child care, to be able to get back to work, generating economic growth. But my plan doesn't stop there. It also includes home and long-term care, more affordable housing, pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds. All these will lower costs to families. And under my plan, nobody, let me say this again, nobody earning less than $400,000 a year will pay.
Yes, we know. Okay, so the pre-K one is the one that I think there's a chance he'll actually get through. A lot of what he just listed, either Joe Manchin or Kirsten Sinema, have already come out against. Unless he somehow got, you know what, and started actually campaigning against them really hard.
System ain't fair. We have to fix it.
The tax system isn't fair, is what he said.
Yes,
anybody. Absolutely.
But let's make corporations and wealthy Americans start paying their fair share. Look, last year, and like Chris Coons and Tom Carper and my distinguished Congresswoman, we come from the land of corporate America. There are more corporations incorporated in America than every other state in America combined. And I still won 36 years in a row. The point is,
I wonder why.
Even they understand they should pay just a fair share. Last year, 55 of the Fortune 500 companies earned $40 billion in profit and paid zero in federal taxes. Now look, it's not fair. That's why I proposed a 15% minimum tax rate for corporations. And that's why in the G7 and other meetings overseas, we're able to put together, I was able to be somewhat helpful, 130 countries agree on a global minimum tax rate. So companies can't get out of paying their taxes at home by shipping jobs and factories overseas. It'll raise billions of dollars. That's why I propose closing loopholes for the very wealthy who don't.
If you want to have fun, just for a good minute, stare only at Nancy Pelosi. She's making all sorts of weird facial expressions.
We will grow the economy, lower the cost of families. So what are we waiting for? Let's get this done. We all know we've got to make changes. Folks, and while you're at it, confirm my nominees for the Federal Reserve, which plays a critical role in fighting inflation. My plan will not only lower costs and give families a fair shot, it will lower the deficit. The previous administration not only ballooned the deficit with those tax cuts for the very wealthy and corporations, it undermined the watchdogs, the job of those to keep pandemic relief funds being wasted. Remember we had those debates about whether or not those watchdogs should be able to see every day how much money was being spent, where was it going to the right place? But in my administration, the watchdogs are back. And we're going to go after the criminals who stole billions of relief money meant for small business and millions of Americans. And tonight I'm announcing that the Justice Department will soon name a chief prosecutor for pandemic fraud.
That's super good, because in those relief bills, I think this is what he's referring to. There was so much money that went, that certain, well-connected individuals, companies were able to get so much more money, even though they didn't need it, than was supposed to be allocated. So I think that's a good idea.
President ever to cut the deficit by more than $1 trillion in a single year. Lowering your cost also meant demanding more competition. I'm a capitalist, but capitalism without competition is not capitalism. Capitalism without competition is exploitation. It drives up profits. And corporations have to compete. Their profits go up and your prices go up when they don't have to compete. Small businesses and family farmers and ranchers, I need not tell some of my reporters.
Don't tell me that you would bet with me actual money that he's actually alive. Like, you think he is, but you wouldn't put money on that, right?
Oh, and you pay a hell of a lot more. A hell of a lot more because there's only 4. See what's happening with ocean carriers and moving goods in and out of America. During the pandemic, about half a dozen or less foreign-owned companies raised prices by as much as 1,000% and made record profits. Tonight, I'm announcing a crackdown on those companies overcharging American businesses and consumers. And folks, and as Wall Street firms take over more nursing homes, quality in those homes has gone down and costs have gone up. That ends on my watch. Medicare is going to set higher standards for nursing homes and make sure your loved ones get the care they deserve and that they inspect and they will look at closely. We're also going to cut costs to keep the economy going strong and giving workers a fair shot, provide more training and apprenticeships, hire them based on skills, not just their degrees. Let's pass the Paycheck Fairness Act and paid leave. Raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour and extend the child tax credit so no one has to raise a family in poverty. Let's increase Pell Grants, increase our historic support for HBCUs, and invest in what Jill, our First Lady who teaches full-time, calls America's best-kept secret, community colleges. Look.
All of this is stuff that he tried to get done before, and he already got blocked on what's going to change in the future that's going to make that happen.
Be able to be stopped. When we invest in our workers and we build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out together, we can do something we haven't done in a long time. Build a better America.
Whatever you think of Joe Biden, Jill Biden is like everyone's mom. Come on.
And the life of this nation. And I know you're tired, frustrated, and exhausted. That doesn't even count the close to 1 million people who sit at a dining room table or a kitchen table and look at an empty chair because they lost somebody.
Aww.
But I also know this, because of the progress we've made, because of your resilience and the tools that we have been provided by this Congress, tonight I can say we're moving forward safely back to more normal routines. We've reached a new moment in the fight against COVID-19, where severe cases are down to a level not seen since July of last year. Just a few days ago, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention issued a new mask guidelines. Under the new guidelines, most Americans and most of the country can now go mask-free. And based on projections, more of the country will reach a point across the next couple of weeks. And thanks to the progress we've made in the past year, COVID-19 no longer need control our lives. I know some are talking about living with COVID-19, but tonight I say that we never will just accept living with COVID-19. We'll continue to combat the virus as we do other diseases. And because this virus mutates and spreads, we have to stay on guard. And here are 4 common sense steps as we move forward safely, in my view. First, stay protected with vaccines and treatments. We know how incredibly effective vaccines are. If you're vaccinated and boosted, you have the highest degree of protection. We'll never give up on vaccinating.
Joanne, what was this comment in reference to? I'm curious.
Vaccines authorized for their children. Scientists are working hard to get that done. We'll be ready with plenty of vaccines if and when they do. We're all ready. We are also ready with antiviral treatments. If you get COVID-19, the Pfizer pill reduces your chances of ending up in the hospital by 90%. I've ordered more pills than anyone in the world has. Pfizer is working overtime to get us 1 million pills this month and more than double that next month. And now we're launching the Test to Treat initiative. So people can get tested at a pharmacy, and if they prove positive, receive the antiviral pills on the spot at no cost. Folks,
So just to give you an update, as expected, Beto O'Rourke did win the Democratic primary, so he'll be running in the general election against Abbott, and then obviously Abbott also won the Republican primary.
And free high-quality masks. We're leaving no one behind.
Because we are following tonight the Texas primaries. the 2022 election.
Made hundreds of millions of tests available, and you can order them for free to your doorstep. And we've already ordered free tests. If you already ordered free tests tonight, I'm announcing you can order another group of tests. Go to covidtest.gov starting next week, and you can get more tests. Second, we must prepare for new variants. Over the past, we've gotten much better at detecting new variants. If necessary, we'll be able to develop new vaccines within 100 days instead of maybe months or years. And if Congress provides the funds we need, we'll have new stockpiles of tests, masks, pills ready if needed. I can't promise a new variant won't come, but I can promise you we'll do everything within our power to be ready if it does. Third, we can end the shutdown of schools and businesses. We have the tools we need. It's time for America to get back to work and fill our great downtowns again with people. People working from home can feel safe and begin to return to their offices. We're doing that here in the federal government. The vast majority of federal workers will once again work in person. Our schools are open. Let's keep it that way. Our kids need to be in school. With 75% of adult Americans fully vaccinated and hospitalizations down by 77%, most Americans can remove their masks and stay in the classroom and move forward safely. We achieved this because we provided free vaccines, treatments, tests, and masks. Of course, continuing this costs money, so I'll not surprise you. I'll be back to see you all. And I'm going to soon send a request to Congress. The vast majority of Americans have used these tools and may want again. We may need them again, so I expect Congress, and I hope you'll pass that quickly. Fourth, we'll continue vaccinating the world. We've sent
1927, Sue said, I lost my best friend of 30 years. I'm so sorry. To COVID last year. Sure would have been nice if she hadn't caught it. Absolutely.
Because you can't build a wall high enough to keep out a vaccine. The vaccine can stop the spread of these diseases. You know, we've lost so much in COVID-19. Time with one another. The worst of all, the loss of life. Let's use this moment to reset. So stop looking at COVID as a partisan dividing line. See it for what it is, a god-awful disease. Let's stop seeing each other as enemies and start seeing each other for who we are, fellow Americans. Look.
Thank you so much, Is it Rini? Rini28? That's very sweet.
It was a long time in coming, but we can change how to move forward on COVID-19 and other issues that we must face together. I recently visited New York City Police Department days after the funerals of Officer Wilbur Mora and his partner, Officer Jason Rivera. They were responding to a 9/11 call when a man shot and killed them with a stolen gun. Officer Mora was 27 years old. Officer Rivera was 22 years old. Both Dominican Americans who grew up in the same streets that they later chose to patrol as police officers. I spoke with their families, and I told them that we were forever in debt for their sacrifices and will carry on their mission to restore the trust and safety of every community deserves. Like some of you that have been around for a while, I've worked with you on these issues for a long time. I know what works. Investigating crime prevention and community policing, cops who walk the beat, who know the neighborhood, and who can restore trust and safety. Let's not abandon our streets or choose between safety and equal justice. Let's come together and protect our communities, restore trust, and hold law enforcement accountable. That's why the Justice Department has required body cameras, banned chokeholds, and restricted no-knock warrants for its officers. That's why the American Rescue Plan that you all provided $350 billion that cities, states, and counties can use to hire more police, invest in more proven strategies.
Looks like Clyburn is about to fall asleep.
Proven strategies like community violence interruption, trusted messengers, breaking the cycle of violence and trauma, and giving young people some hope. We should all agree the answer is not to defund the police. It's to fund the police. Fund them. Fund.
Obviously, I agree a lot with like the broader criticism of the defund the police slogan and stuff like that. I think that was needlessly antagonistic of his more left activist base. Hopefully he explains what he means by that.
Pass my budget and keep our neighborhoods safe. And we'll do everything in my power to crack down on gun trafficking, of ghost guns that you can buy online, assemble at home, no serial numbers, can't be traced.
That's just not the
biggest proven measures
issue
to
with
reduce
gun control
violence.
at all.
Pass universal background checks. Why should anyone on the terrorist list be able to purchase a weapon? Why? Why? And folks, ban assault weapons with high capacity.
Another thing that Joe Manchin and Christian Cinema are blocking, and we have to get rid of the filibuster, which we are not going to do.
That makes gun manufacturers the only industry in America that can't be sued. The only one. Imagine had we done that with the tobacco manufacturers. These laws don't infringe on the Second Amendment. They save lives. The most fundamental right in America is the right to vote and have it counted. And look, it's under assault. In state after state, new laws have been passed. Not only to suppress the vote, we've been there before, but to subvert the entire election. We can't let this happen. Tonight I call on the Senate to pass the Freedom to Vote Act, pass the John Lewis Act, Voting Rights Act. And while you're at it, pass the Disclose Act so Americans know who's funding our election. Look.
I agree with all those policies, but they're not going to get done because, like I said, we already tried. The two lovely senators have blocked them before. What's going to change?
Retiring Justice of the United States Supreme Court, Justice Breyer, thank you for your service. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean it. Get up, stand, let them see you. Thank you. And we all know.
Okay, that's kind of cute.
No matter what your ideology, we all know one of the most serious constitutional responsibility a president has is nominating someone to serve on the United States Supreme Court. As I did 4 days ago, I've nominated the Circuit Court of Appeals, Ketanji Brown Jackson, one of our nation's top legal minds, who will continue in Justice Breyer's legacy of excellence. A former top litigator in private practice.
Ketanji Brown Jackson is awesome.
From a family of public school educators and police officers. She's a consensus builder. Since she's been nominated, she's received a broad range of support, including the Fraternal Order of Police and former judges supported by Democrats and Republicans. Folks, if we're to advance liberty and justice, we need to secure our border and fix the immigration system.
See, this is what Biden does. He uses, probably what he means by that is, I don't know what he means by that, but he uses language that is very Republican friendly, like secure our border. It's not that there aren't things to do on the border that would be considered securing them that I would disagree with. Of course there are, but you're playing into the narrative that there's tons of immigrants flooding across the border. That's the biggest issue. They're violent, blah, blah, blah. And he's not going to get the support of Republicans who are obsessed with that. He's just not. If they like Republican policy, they'll just vote for Republicans. Why would they vote for Biden?
Can be sent back. We're screening, we're securing commitments and supporting partners in South and Central America to host more refugees and secure their own borders. We can do all this while keeping lit the torch of liberty that has led a generation of immigrants to this land, my forebears and many of yours. Provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, those with temporary status, far more.
The amount of presidents, or the number of presidents who have said that and not followed through.
So businesses have workers they need, and families don't wait decades to reunite. It's not only the right thing to do, it's economically smart thing to do. That's why the immigration reform is supported by everyone from labor unions to religious leaders to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Let's get it done once and for all. Folks, advancing liberty and justice also requires protecting the rights of women. The constitutional right affirmed by Roe v. Wade, standing precedent for half a century, is under attack as never before. If you want to go forward, not backwards, we must protect access to health care, preserve a woman's right to choose, and continue to advance maternal health care for all Americans. And folks, for our LGBTQ plus Americans, let's finally get the Bipartisan Equality Act to my desk. The onslaught of state laws targeting transgender Americans and their families, it's simply wrong. And I said last year, especially to our younger transgender Americans, I'll always have your back as your president so you can be yourself and reach your God-given potential. Folks, as I've just demonstrated, while it often appears we do not agree, and that we do agree on a lot more things than we acknowledge. I signed 80 bipartisan bills into law last year, from preventing government shutdowns, to protecting Asian Americans from still too common hate crimes, to reforming military justice, and will soon be strengthening the Violence Against Women Act that I first wrote 3 decades ago. And it's important. It's important for us to show the nation we can come together and do big things. So tonight I'm offering a unity agenda for the nation. 4 big things we can do together, in my view. First, beat the opioid epidemic. There's so much we can do. Increase funding for prevention, treatment, harm reduction, and recovery. Get rid of outdated rules and stop doctors that stop doctors from prescribing treatments. Stop the flow of illicit drugs by working with state and local law enforcement to go after the traffickers. And if you're suffering from addiction, you should know you're not alone. I believe in recovery, and I celebrate the 23 million Americans in recovery. Second,
Why haven't you taken marijuana off the first little substance list? I can't remember what it's called.
Teachers and help students make up for lost learning. I urge every parent to make sure you're
Schedule 1 substance list. There we go.
have the money. We can all play a part. Sign up to be a
Right.
tutor or a mentor. Children were also struggling before the pandemic, bullying, violence, trauma, and the harms of social media. As Frances Haugen, who is here tonight with us, has shown, we must hold social media platforms accountable for the national experiment they're conducting on our children for profit. Folks, thank you. Thank you for the courage you showed. It's time to strengthen privacy protections, ban targeted advertising to children, demand tech companies stop collecting personal data on our children, and let's get all Americans the mental health services they need. More people can turn for help and full parity between physical and mental health care if we treat it that way in our insurance. Look,
Good stuff, good stuff.
The third piece of that agenda is support our veterans. Veterans are the backbone and the spine of this country. They're the best of us. I've always believed that we have a sacred obligation to equip those we send to war and care for those in their family when they come home. My administration is providing assistance in job training, housing, and now helping lower-income veterans get VA care debt-free. And our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan have faced many dangers, one being stationed at bases breathing in toxic smoke from burn pits. Many of you have been there. I've been in and out of Iraq and Afghanistan over 40 times. These burn pits that incinerate waste, the waste of war, medical and hazardous material, jet fuel, and so much more. And they come home, many of the world's fittest and best trained warriors in the world, never the same. Headaches, numbness, dizziness. A cancer that would put them in a flag-draped coffin. I know. One of those soldiers was my son, Major Bo Biden. I don't know for sure if the burn pit that he lived near, that his hooch was near in Iraq and earlier than that in Kosovo, is the cause of his brain cancer, the disease of so many other troops. But I am committed to find out everything we can, committed to military families like Danielle Robinson from Ohio, the widow of Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson. He was born a soldier, Army National Guard, combat medic in Kosovo and Iraq, stationed near Baghdad, just yards from burn pits the size of football fields. Danielle is here with us tonight. They love going to Ohio State football games.
Rini, it is legal in, it was Marjorie Taylor Greene. She said something about the 13 soldiers that died in that suicide bombing whenever Biden was pulling out of Afghanistan. But, oh, hey, Jared, one of my favorite viewers. You're the most committed. Yeah, I was going to say to Rini, it is legal in some states, but the point is what Biden could do is make it decriminalized across the, or not enforced, like, you know, where people want to get arrested for and stuff across the country.
Tonight, Danielle, we are going to do better. The VA
yes,
is pioneering
Nate,
new ways of linking toxic exposure to disease, already helping more veterans get benefits. And tonight, I'm announcing we're expanding eligibility to veterans suffering from 9 respiratory cancers. I'm also calling on Congress to pass a law to make sure veterans devastated by toxic exposure in Iraq and Afghanistan finally get the benefits and the comprehensive health care they deserve. And fourth and last, let's end cancer as we know it. This is personal.
Wow.
This is personal to me and to Jill and to Kamala and so many of you. So many of you have lost someone you love. Husband, wife, son, daughter, mom, dad. Cancer is the #2 cause of death in America, second only to heart disease. Last month, I announced the plan to supercharge the cancer moonshot that President Obama asked me to lead 6 years ago. Our goal is to cut cancer death rates by at least 50% over the next 25 years, and I think we can do better than that. Turn cancers from death sentences into treatable diseases. More support for patients and their families. To get there, I call on Congress to fund what I call ARPA-H, Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health, patterned after DARPA in the Defense Department.
It's a mouthful.
Projects that led in DARPA to the internet, GPS, and so much more that make our forces more safer and be able to wage war.
1927 Sue said the term Karen needs to be replaced with Marjorie. Love it.
Drive breakthroughs in cancer, Alzheimer's and diabetes, and more. A unity agenda for the nation. We can do these things. It's within our power, and I don't see a partisan edge to any one of those four things. My fellow Americans, tonight we've gathered in this sacred space, a citadel of democracy, in this Capitol. Generation after generation of Americans have debated great questions amid great strife and have done great things. We fought for freedom, expanded liberty, debated totalitarianism and terror. We built the strongest, freest, and most prosperous nation the world has ever known. Now is the hour, our moment of responsibility, our test of resolve and conscience, of history itself. It is in this moment that our character of this generation is formed. Our purpose is found. Our future is forged. Well, I know this nation. We'll meet the test, protect freedom and liberty, expand fairness and opportunity, and we will save democracy. As hard as those times have been, I'm more optimistic about America today than I've been my whole life, because I see the future that's within our grasp, because I know there's simply nothing beyond our capacity. We're the only nation on earth that has always turned every crisis we've faced into an opportunity. The only nation that can be defined by a single word: possibilities. So on this night, on our 245th year as a nation, I've come to report on the state of the nation, the State of the Union. And my report is this: the State of the Union is strong because you, the American people, are strong. We are stronger today. We are stronger today than we were a year ago. And we'll be stronger a year from now than we are today. This is our moment to meet and overcome the challenges of our time. And we will, as one people, one America, the United States of America. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you. Go get him.
Weird ending there. Go get him. Wait, is he referring to a bro shake with Nancy? Did you notice that Nancy Pelosi kept trying to talk to Kamala in the middle of it? Kamala was like, yeah, okay, he's kind of giving us a speech right now. All right, y'all, drop some comments. What you think? Klobuchar. This is if one of these people has COVID, they're all getting it. Okay, so as he's kind of walking off, obviously we're standing by for the responses. My brother told me that they're expecting 4 Democratic responses, which does definitely represent the kind of deep divide within the party. Because usually last year, I can't remember. I think there is a kind of cordial response usually by the party of the president, but it's usually very supportive. But then last year we saw Jamal Bowman give kind of the progressive response, and it was a little bit not critical, but you know, you can now it's time for you to follow through with these promises. But overall, I would say fine speech. Obviously, as expected, he started with G's 4. I know, right? So we have a lot to look forward to. And then we're also waiting to hear about the Jessica Cisneros election in Texas. And anyway, so I think overall, you know, he started with the Russia-Ukraine stuff. Great. As I've said in previous videos, I mean, I think Biden has pretty much done flawlessly, which I rarely ever say about anybody in the political sphere, in his management of the whole conflict. He tried not to provoke Putin more than he had to, but made it clear that we were going to defend Ukraine's sovereignty up until the point of direct military conflict. We would not, get involved on the ground or anything and start World War III. This division is so stressful for me. I get what you're saying, but to me, there's something beautiful. Not the division between the right and the left. That's just stressful. I agree. But the division among the Democratic Party shows that there's a lot of people waking up to the fact that just because the Democrats are the better of two evils all the time, doesn't mean they can't be severely better. And it just takes enough strong progressive leaders to get into positions of power to shift the center of the party left. And more than that, because it's not about like a linear scale. To me, if you were moderate because you genuinely believed kind of like in between a big, let's say, take a particular issue. You're like, I don't think the government should do universal health care, genuinely. But I also don't think it should be completely free market. Let's find something in the middle. That's one thing. But what we have right now is a system where almost all of the federal lawmakers get so much money from special interests that they call themselves moderate, but what they mean by that is on a lot of things, I'm not going to want to go against corporate interest, and I'll cloak that in this idea of being moderate. So I think the division's beautiful in a way because it's a lot of the Democratic base realizing that even though the Democrats are better, they're still really corrupt, a lot of them, in a lot of ways. And so if we can put people in there who don't take corporate PAC money and have a certain stance on these kind of corruption issues, we can really change the way that our federal lawmakers serve us. So I think it's really cool. Justice Breyer is hilarious to watch. Whenever he was going like this, that was so sweet. So before we get to those responses, do y'all all want to cringe? I know you've all seen this video, but I haven't watched it on stream or anything. I watched pieces of it. Before we get to that, let me read a comment or two. We all better vote blue in 2022. If we lose, our country is headed for a dictatorship. I know that sounds harsh, but the lawlessness of the GOP will hold no bounds. We have to. So just y'all that's all right. I'll try to watch. Because I don't want to miss one of the things. I kind of want to, let's see about ABC, y'all. Might be, I agree. We can't allow our criticisms and strong disagreements on a lot of things with the Democratic Party discourage us from going out to vote in 2022 because, as you mentioned, even though it's enraging how much the Democrats don't act and how corrupt they are a lot of times, we're not going to get to move them left or boot out a lot of the corrupt ones if, democracy's in shambles or something. So have to vote blue, then sort out the corruption in our party later. I think walk and chew gum at the same time. Yeah, but I agree with the sentiment. Be rooting out the corruption while when it comes to the general election, we vote blue. But like what we're seeing in Texas tonight, two Democrats going up against each other. But if Cisneros comes out ahead, then that's a big win for the anti-corruption wing of the Democratic Party, which is the progressives.
By his regulations, just in the state of North Dakota, he has cut the amount of production by 500,000 barrels a day, every day. And you know how much we import from Russia a day, David? 480,000 barrels. And we're still doing it as we speak today. What he should have been talking about tonight was how he's going to allow American oil and gas production to go, but he can't because he would have gotten booed by his liberal wing in that place. And the other thing that struck me was him saying that it's sad that it took this long and something so terrible for people around the world to see how grave the danger was. What about him? For a year, he has refused to sell defensive weapons to the Ukrainians. He didn't see it for a year.
Okay, let's see if we can fit this in. I know you've seen it, but I gotta watch it on stream. So if you haven't, it's a Hollywood whatever actress. I don't even know who this is, but oh, it hurts so bad. And she wrote a poem to Vladimir Putin saying, "If I was your mother, maybe you wouldn't be doing these things." Let's watch it.
Russia's large-scale military attack on Ukraine. Former 90210 star Anna Lynn McCord recited a bizarre poem on Twitter where she addressed
Dear President Vladimir Putin.
Okay, here we go.
I'm so sorry that I was not your mother. If I was your mother, you would have been so loved, held in the arms of joyous light. Never would the stories plight the world unfurled before our eyes, a pure demise of nations sitting peaceful under a night sky. If I was your mother, the world would have been warm. So much laughter and joy, and nothing would harm. I can't imagine the stain, the soul-stealing pain that the little boy you must have seen and believed, and the formulation of thought quickly taught that you lived in a cruel, unjust world. If I was your mother, if the world was cold, I'd have died to make you warm. I'd have died to protect you from the unjust, the violence, the terror, the uncertainty. I would have died to give you life. Oh, dear Mr. President Putin, if only I'd been your mother. And whatever your story, Mr. President Putin, I can't imagine how it feels in your heart, but I know if I was your mother, that would be a start towards the awareness of what a powerful being of light you could be if your mind was only free from the violence you've seen when you were just 2 or 3.
She has a little Buddha.
I cannot believe I was born too late.
That was I didn't know how quickly we were gonna have to fit that in. We could have watched the whole thing, but that was kind of edited together. She's getting a lot of hate for it. I get it. It's sort of insensitive. Not real. I mean, it's just her thinking she's, like can bring peace to the world with love. And I think that's a respectable life perception. I think it's flawed. But if she was his mother, hey, you never know. She's getting a lot of hate for it. I think it's just funny and cringy. But yeah, that was that. I love there's one part that I don't think showed yeah, exactly. 1927 said she's the one that tipped Putin into an uproar. I know, right? So yeah, I just think, people get in their little bubble. And it's like, oh, what if it would be cool to talk about how if we just killed him with kindness, he wouldn't be doing this. But no reason to freak out on her, as many are doing. I think it's just funny. I think she did a similar thing with some other, there's like a tragedy going on and she did a similar thing. Okay. Let's get to, oh, what happened here? I'll X that out. Get back to this. State of the Union. I like the NBC is probably good too. I just want the ones that,
and then it didn't land there a little bit.
Have like more interesting commentators, because some of the the PBSs get a little sleepy. Okay, while we're waiting for the responses, I don't actually remember when those happen. We'll do a little update. Satellite images showed a 40-mile-long Russian military convoy approaching Ukraine's capital of Kiev on Tuesday, as authorities said Russian forces carried out a deadly attack on the city's main TV tower. So that was huge, trying to cut off kind of elements of their communication abilities. And I don't know. So I mentioned this on my last stream that the vibe I'm getting from this broadly is we're seeing good signs for sure. Sorry, I was trying to get something else set up, but that's why I was talking weird. We're seeing very positive signs. A lot of people expected, and I think I expected, and I think Putin expected for Ukraine to just fall like this. And they were going to show a bunch of strength in the first, Russia was going to show a bunch of strength in the first couple days. It was going to frighten the Ukrainian people and frighten the Ukrainian leaders. And then they were going to quickly take over before people could even figure out what was going on. But that's not what happened. Ukraine stayed super strong, and you can see in the top right corner here, it's showing footage that has a little bit of Zelensky in it. He has stayed incredibly strong. There's a notable story that came out where Biden said, I don't know if it was on the phone, but somehow there was an invitation. It may have been over the phone. And Biden / the United States gave an invitation to evacuate Zelensky. And Zelensky's response was, don't send, they said, we'll send, whatever it was, we'll send you a evacuation something. And he said, like, don't come to evacuate me, send weapons, because we're going to fight. And it's right out of a movie, because he's stayed so incredibly brave. While I'm talking, I'll do this. This is more interesting. And I think that's helped a lot with the morale of the Ukrainian people. And so you gotta applaud him for that. But anyways, apparently reporting behind the scenes says that Putin's getting very, very mad, and this really isn't going the way that he expected. And I think that's a good sign. It's either a really good sign or a really bad sign. Here's why. It's a good sign because we want like Russia to do poorly. We want Ukraine to stand strong enough for long enough, and for the economic attacks that the West are doing to Russia to hit hard enough that Russia ends up giving up. That's the best option. The worst option is Putin has been planning this for years. It starts not going his way. The Russian economy is falling apart, and he ends up kind of, mental break. And we've already seen serious threats from him of nuclear war. And then there was reporting that said he's putting their whoever manages their nuclear weapons on high alert, and for them to start prepping those areas, which is not a good sign. And so when I analyze this from like a logical perspective, I don't get concerned at all. So before he invaded and people talked about the threat of nuclear war, the Chick-fil-A's causing me to burp. I really was not that concerned, but now it's seeming a little bit like the right variables might be coming together where he loses it a little bit, and kind of feels like if I'm going down, because this was such a humiliation, the world's going down with me. That's the only fear. Because any other world leaders, you can't be that concerned with nuclear war, because every world leader is going to know if they launch the first one, a whole bunch are coming back at them. There's no scenario where one country could launch nukes and like demolish everyone before they got to the, you know what I'm saying? And that doesn't even make sense. How would that benefit a country? It wouldn't. And so I usually am not that concerned with it. But if Putin gets kind of like rattled enough, and then the steady posture that he's given off while he's been in power, and by steady, I don't mean like moral or anything like that. I just mean he comes off as not super irrational. I hate using these words because it sounds like I'm giving him credit. I'm just saying he seems like he can keep his cool even when he's doing bad stuff. But if he really has been holding in this side and he has a mental break or something, that's the one scenario where nuclear war could happen. And that's not good. especially with that reporting about him putting the nuclear look at this, the nuclear launch sites on high alert. Weird back of his head. Okay, the plotting Russian advance on the ground came while Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, was hit by intense shelling as Vladimir Putin's invasion of the neighboring nation entered its sixth day. The UN Human Rights Office said Tuesday that at least 136 civilians had been killed by Russia's assault, including 13 children. Just completely needless. So needless and heartbreaking. That's the wrong thing. Okay, they're going to break. That's a good sign for us. Talks between Ukrainian and Russian representatives lasted several hours Monday, and both sides agreed to meet again in the coming days. That's good. Originally, Putin was saying, we will only talk with y'all if you beforehand agree to complete military completely disarming your country militarily, which is so dumb. I mean, and Zelensky obviously denied that, said no to that, but the fact that they would even think that's something that Ukraine would do, you just invaded them to take over their country, and you're saying, hey, we'll leave if you'll get rid of all of your military resources, and we promise that we won't invade again right afterwards. Okay. Because that's been the only reason why Ukraine hasn't fallen, is they've had military supplies, and a lot of them given by the West, and they've been able to stand strong in that sense. And then the very beginning we read about the 40-mile long Russian military convoy. That's freaky, because these are armed military vehicles, 40 miles long of them, heading towards the capital city. And obviously, if the capital city falls, that's not the complete end of the war, of course. But it is representative of the central area of power. No longer, it's representative of a lot, if that makes sense. Rini said, amazing that the Russians were protesting, shocking. That was amazing. Yeah, and they're currently doing that, which is really good, because even though Putin is not the president of an actual democracy, public opinion still does matter in a sense. And so the fact that it isn't this unified people around him is really good. Very, very good.
Efforts at diplomacy. He thought the West and NATO wouldn't respond. He thought he could divide us at home.
They're just doing a
in
recap.
This chamber, in this
but obviously so it's mixed emotions all around, because the strength that Ukraine is showing is amazing. Makes you feel very good. The bravery that we're seeing from Vladimir Zelensky inspires a lot of hope. But at the same time, because it's not going Putin's way, we also have to get more scared, which is not fun. Yeah. Let me see. We can watch a little bit of this. Let me see if I can get updates on the primaries. I think we're still waiting to hear back.
We're seeing him going after civilian populations, hitting the TV tower, but also that Holocaust memorial. It's going to be devastation. And when the president said tonight there are going to be hard days ahead for the brave people of Ukraine, the next week the next 10 days are just going to be horrific because they so outnumber those brave souls.
But he went from that strong language and said, let me be clear, our forces are not engaged and will not engage in conflict with Russian forces.
Well, that's the question. Is that sustainable? I mean, when you start, I mean, first of all, that's something for which there seems to be actual agreement in large swaths. Nobody is calling for American boots on the ground in Ukraine.
The vice chair of Senate Intelligence on Foreign Relations, to me, said today, we're not going in. That is a red line.
And even that idea of a no-fly zone has been poo-pooed by the White House because you would end up in a situation where American airplanes might be forced to.
As the president said to you, Lester, a couple of weeks ago in your important interview with him, he said we're not going to get into a world war with Russia. That's
Look,
World War III.
it seems that NATO's so concerned about this. Some of these NATO nations, that there were a few that were going to send some planes over to help with Ukrainian pilots, and somebody got to them because they don't want to give the Russians the wrong impression.
Well,
all right, Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds is about to give the Republican response.
Okay, here we go.
Like you, I just watched the president's address. I listened as the governor of our state, as a mom and a grandmother of 11 who's worried our country is on the wrong track. We're now 1 year into his presidency, and instead of moving America forward, it feels like President Biden and his party have sent us back in time to the late 70s and early 80s, when runaway inflation was hammering families, a violent crime wave was crashing our cities, and the Soviet Army was trying to redraw the world map. Even before taking the oath of office, the president told us that he wanted to, quote, make America respected around the world again, and to unite us here at home. He's failed on both fronts. The disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal did more than cost American lives. It betrayed our allies and emboldened our enemies. North Korea is testing missiles again at an alarming rate. The Speaker of the House recently warned our Olympic athletes not to speak out against China. And now Russia has launched an unprovoked, full-scale military invasion of Ukraine, an attack on democracy, freedom, and the rule of law. Now all Americans must stand united in solidarity with the brave people of Ukraine as they courageously defend their country against Putin's tyranny as they fight for their freedom. But we shouldn't ignore what happened in the run-up to Putin's invasion, waiving sanctions on Russian pipelines while eliminating oil production here at home, focusing on political correctness rather than military readiness, reacting to world events instead of driving them. Weakness on the world stage has a cost, and the president's approach to foreign policy has consistently been too little.
I'm deeply uninterested in what she has to say. We'll keep watching it, but I'll talk over right now. You saw it right there. The weird contradiction from a lot of Republicans trying to criticize Biden about the Putin situation. Hey guys, and I think we did this with Trump a little bit. So, well, not we. I wasn't a creator back then, but and I think I would have been good. I would have nailed every single take on Trump whenever he was president. But what I try to do is not to criticize people on the right or Republicans for the sake of criticism, right? Not just to do it because usually we disagree, so I'll just go ahead and criticize them anyways. And that's what you see a lot with the way that the right has been criticizing Biden. Is like there are things to criticize him on, but then a lot of times before it seems like they've even gotten a sense of the situation, they'll just jump to finding something. And when they do that, there's a lot of like friction among individuals in the party, and then also just one person will also create friction in their own arguments, because it's kind of like, and you saw it there with the Putin, dealing with Putin and the Russia criticism is he, by waiving sanctions, blah, 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 and that kind of goes to the side of he shouldn't have provoked him so much. And then 3 seconds later, we'll be like, and he's been way too weak and just let Putin do this. And we saw this a lot with people on the right criticizing Biden for either provoking Putin, and before he even invaded, he was saying, blah, 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 he shouldn't have done that. And then also he's way too weak and didn't do enough to stop this. It's like, well, which one is it? Should he done more? Should he have more economic sanctions beforehand, or more threats of economic sanctions, or less? But it's just kind of like, I don't know. I just want to be mad at him. And I encourage y'all not to do that with the right. So if you see something that Trump says and your knee-jerk reaction is like, ugh, stupid, but you can't describe why, maybe take a second to be like, wait, do I actually disagree with this point? Because I can say I have come to know that that man's character is deeply, deeply flawed, and a lot of the stuff he's done is terrible. That's why I don't support Trump, okay? But what he just said there is fine, right? Because you have to show that you're analyzing each individual thing rather than just choosing to be against somebody, even if the reason that you chose to be against them is very justified, and then every single take that you ever have after that is based on the fact that you already don't like them, right?
The president's agenda didn't pass because even members of his own party said enough is enough.
It didn't pass because even members of his own party get the exact same contributions that you get from special interests.
And it's not just with DC spending. Americans are tired of a political class trying to remake this country into a place where an elite few tell.
Let's see. I thought Afghanistan withdrawal was amazing. Trump didn't even try anything except set free 5,000 criminals. So yeah, that's the other thing. All the Republicans supported Trump whenever he said, let's get out of Afghanistan. But then now they're like, Biden sucks because he did that Afghanistan withdrawal. And they even realize they can't leave it at that because it'd be too much of a, contradiction. Guys, why am I barking so much? And so instead, they'll say it was the way that he got out, the way that he did it. I'm sure there were things he could have done better. But when you get out of a 2-decade-long war where we're propping up a government and then you try to pull out all the troops, it's going to be messy. And I can assure you, if Trump was in power, it would not have gone any better. And all the people who literally gave Trump credit for lowering troop levels, which Obama did that too. He brought the troop levels up and down. You have to give Biden credit for it. Makes me so mad, guys. If Trump had done the exact same thing and everything went the same way, that the 13 soldiers died, all of those things. First of all, I hope that people on the left would have still given Trump credit for that, because that would be intellectual honesty. But also, that the right would have been so proud of Trump. That would have been one of the first things they brought up. He got us out of the endless war. Blah, blah, blah. You said he was going to start wars, but he ended one. And then we saw in the CPAC speech, just so you know, I'm way more interested in the Democratic responses because they're actually going to criticize him from the left, probably. That's more interesting than just like talking point about this and this and this. But yeah, in Trump's CPAC speech, he was like, people said I was going to start a third world war, but I didn't. I ended them. Well, lowered the troop levels down to 2,000. No one's ever done that before except for Biden, who did it all the way down. So he's still bragging about almost ending a war, but then they won't give Biden credit for actually ending one. And again, there's so many things to criticize Biden about. So many things. If you watch his, one of the points I was going to make is his first, you remember his first speech to the joint session of Congress? It wasn't technically a State of the Union, but it was the same thing. His first one. And he gave a wonderful speech. He promised so many things. And what we said at the time, I wasn't on YouTube then, but what I would have said and what I was saying to my family and friends is like, yay, I love all the things he just said, but none of them are going to be able to get done. Be able to get through the bought off members of the Democratic Party, notably Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. And that's exactly what we saw. And so I'm a little bit disappointed because, okay, so is this going to be it for the next 2 State of the Unions, because he just did this one and then he has 2 more ahead of us, where he just gives a speech and I'm going to do all these great things. This is what's going to happen. This is what State of the Unions are. But I'm going to do all these amazing things. And like, it's hard not to be excited when you hear him say that, because you want those amazing things. You want childcare costs to go down. You know, you want universal pre-K. You want Medicare to be able to negotiate drug prices. You want prices of pharmaceutical drugs to go down. All those things. But what good is it if it's just words and you're not getting any of them done, and you can't pretend like some magical thing's going to change and all of a sudden Joe Manchin's going to be like, never mind, I want to do all those things that I spent years blocking, or at this point, 1.5 years blocking. So it would have been a great chance for him to use this massive platform to call out who's standing in your way. You just listed off all these amazing things that you want. Who's standing in your way? Obviously, all the Republicans are. Say that. Boom, boom. Then say also 2 of my Democratic members of the Senate are also standing in the way, because we do have the House, the Senate, and the White House, and we still can't get done all these things that you elected me to do, and you elected these senators to do. And you can't give me this nonsense. We've all, everyone knows this, but you can't give me the nonsense of, oh, it's because Joe Manchin's from West Virginia. It's not his fault. He has to serve his constituents. But you poll his constituents, and even in West Virginia, red state. All those things that, not all the things, but the things that he was trying to get past, Biden was in the Build Back Better plan, were so popular in the, in West Virginia, and then of course in Arizona. Now, I feel better about Arizona because Kyrsten Sinema is super unpopular now, but somehow Joe Manchin, he's so good at propaganda, so West Virginia still supports him largely, but that's kind of the partisan brain thing, because they just see the left versus the right, and they're like, our senator's standing up for, or standing against the left, hurrah. But, like I mentioned, undeniably, they would very much support Build Back Better. Indubitably. Let's see. Ivanka was supposed to fix childcare for working parents. She did not. Yeah, she did not. Exactly. The GOP crapped on the average Americans. True. Only 13 casualties during wartime, not to take away their loss. So obviously way more casualties in the Afghanistan war. I know that's not what you meant, but just to be clear. But then 13 casualties, American casualties in the withdrawal, but we can't forget what was it, 100 civilian casualties in the withdrawal? That is not insignificant. Let's see, y'all. I saw an update on this. Okay, 59% of the vote is reported in Texas, and right now, Jessica Cisneros has the lead, 49.8% of the vote. Henry Cuellar has 45.4% of the vote. Almost 50% to 45%. That's a pretty good lead. From what I was reading, she had a massive lead coming out. This lady's still talking.
Of America at its best. All of America. Over the last few years, I've put my faith in Iowans, and they haven't let me down. I encourage this president to do the same, to put his faith in you, the American people, who have never wavered in your belief in this country, regardless of who leads it. Because you've shown that the soul of America isn't about who lives in the White House. It's men and women like you in every corner of this nation who are willing to step up and take responsibility for your communities, for your neighbors, and ultimately for yourselves. By that most important measure at least, the state of our union is indeed strong. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
The Republican response from Kim Reynolds, governor.
Who is she again? Somebody said she's the governor of Iowa.
NBC News senior business analyst Stephanie Rule with that. Stephanie?
Lester, Savannah, President Biden has a complicated economic story to tell.
Some of the GOP likes Putin better than Biden. That has been so weird, you guys. It's been so weird. You saw Nick Fuentes? That was so cringy. His little white nationalist version of CPAC. Oh, you were being like, you were kidding about who is she? Yeah, I get it. That's funny. Yeah, he was speaking. You saw this, Nick Fuentes? And first of all, why is he we should see if we can find this. Let's see. Yeah, let's see if we can find it. Let me switch over here to make sure I don't miss the response. But I want to show this Nick Fuentes.
Reaction to the
Is that his
speech,
name,
to the
Nick
extent
Fuentes?
that the folks there will even hear of it when they are literally fighting for their lives.
No, Savannah, it is a good point. It's going to be 6 o'clock in the morning shortly here. Ukrainians are going to wake up, and I can be very honest with you, the president's speech is not going to be on their mind. They are waking up and they're going to volunteer centers, and they're packing bags full of food, water, and diapers to be sent out to the war-torn regions.
What should I write?
After that, they're assembling camouflage nets or Molotov cocktails. Men who run auto parts stores or are dentists or doctors are now running
what was it
military
called?
checkpoints looking for Russians.
We'll see if that gets it. Let's see if this is it.
But I want to say it very clearly and very directly. I believe this election was stolen from Donald J. Trump.
I will never, ever apologize for objecting to an adjacent event. This one organized by an avowed white supremacist called the America First Political Action Conference. You could call it a fringe gathering, except for the fact that 2 sitting members of Congress were a part of it. Republicans Paul Gosar of Arizona and Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. Now listen to what Nick Fuentes, the anti-Semitic white nationalist leader of the conference, said just before introducing his special guest, Congresswoman Greene.
And you want to know the secret? To borrow a phrase from a friend of mine,
guys, I'm not even kidding. His voice makes me so uncomfortable. You wanna... Oh my gosh, it's... We're gonna have to listen to this, but he makes me, like, the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Okay. And watch the way he's smiling the whole time.
secret sauce here, it's these young white men. That's what we call the secret ingredient. America and the world has forgotten about them, but not.
Really? Oh my God. Guys, there are people. Okay, whatever.
Not us. You know, they say about America, they say diversity is our strength, you know. And I look at China and I look at Russia. Can we give a round of applause for Russia? Yes.
Mind you, this is the weekend after the invasion started. Russia's invading a sovereign nation, slaughtering. There's 13 plus children killed. And he says, "Give a round of applause for Russia." Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, that's the podium that Marjorie Taylor Greene then appeared at. And today, she started feeling the heat. She tried to pretend she had no idea who the white supremacist guy was or what he stood for. But you can see from her speech, right after his, that she knew. But you can see from her speech.
Okay. So that's that. And at one point he goes, I wish it was in this one. He goes, and they're trying to compare Putin to Hitler as if that's a bad thing. I shouldn't have said that. And then Marjorie Taylor Greene, sitting congresswoman, goes and speaks. Look at this. He's like, hey, yeah. Very friendly. And let's see. How do you even response Nick Fuentes? Let's see if we can get their thing. I just want to get the interview of her getting, I don't know. Anyways, you heard a little bit in that clip. She defended herself by saying that she didn't know who Nick Fuentes was or what views he stood for. But she was standing in the wings listening to him give the speech we just watched. He spoke before her. No, now you know what he stands for, and you can go, never mind, I don't want to speak. Crazy. Crazy stuff.
Stop Russia being able to hold the world hostage. That is scary too.
So, as I mentioned, let's see. Oh, a bunch of new votes came in. Oh, guys, it's looking good. 61% of the vote reported. Jessica Cisneros has 50.3% of the vote. And Henry Cuellar has stayed below 50%, or below 45%, 44.8%. So now it's like above 50% to still 45%. That is good news, people. Jessica Cisneros may pull this out. And of course, Henry Cuellar's recently gotten a lot of national attention because he got raided by the FBI for taking allegedly taking illegal payments from some foreign government, or not government, some foreign business, I think it was. Crazy stuff. But Jessica Cisneros, of course, ran against him last time he was up for re-election and narrowly lost. And so she's doing a round 2, and it's looking good for her right now. And she's a great progressive. All the things we talked about earlier, against corruption, and not just against it in words. That doesn't matter. Every single politician would say, I'm against corruption. She's against corruption in actual actions, and she doesn't take corporate PAC money. She's a Justice Democrat. What we need. What we need. Let's see. Jessica. Oh gosh, sorry guys. Cisneros. Campaign ad. Let's see if we can get hyped for her election.
They said we had no chance. They said the patrones were just too powerful. They said change was impossible here. But we showed them that the dreams of immigrants, truckers, rancheros, and teachers can be just as powerful as their corporate dollars.
Now we're back to finish what we started, to do what my dad taught me.
Work hard, keep at it, y enseñar que la esperanza nunca muere. Over the past year, our community has suffered through this pandemic, waking up day
Jared asked which race is that in Texas. So there's a number of races, but the one that we're looking at strongly, as Trump would say, is the Jessica Cisneros versus Henry Cuellar. Of course, she's challenging incumbent Henry Cuellar, who's been in like a bazillion years in Congress. And so huge upset if she can do it, but it's looking good for her. And then Sean Hefferon said, over from Pacman's stream, glad to be following you. Awesome, Sean. Thank you so much for being here. 1927, Sue said, white people have an obligation to make sure minorities are treated fairly. I definitely get what you're saying. I am about, like, we as people, it happens that in our socioeconomic and social dynamic, it is largely statistically white people who have the advantage in many different areas. So that's where you would get the phrase like white people's obligation, but it's humanity's obligation, and especially people within one country's obligation to want as close as we can get to equality of opportunity. And right now, I think conservatives hear that and like, yeah, opportunity, that means you have the ability to, which means even if you're at the absolute bottom of the totem pole, technically you can get to the top. And you hear amazing stories about people doing that. Sort of true, but no. The way that we have it set up, like there's this crazy study that was done that shows one of the biggest indicators of what your life outcomes are going to be is the zip code you're born into. That just proves to you instantly, okay, then what is it? And then it happens that we're still a very, very segregated society in the United States. And so a lot of zip codes are, you know, a very high black population, a very high white population, etc. And so what we see is black people, brown people are way more likely to live in the zip codes that are much more impoverished. And then that is a massive indicator for how those individuals' life outcomes are going to pan out. And so I'm in Texas, but the name didn't sound familiar, so I wasn't sure what position Cisneros would. Oh, it's a congressional campaign. So she would be, you know, another one of the squad type vibe. And so, and then especially for us, a lot of the reasons that black people today statistically have a much harder time succeeding economically is based off of the remnants of very racialized oppression, right? So everyone understands slavery, but after that, there was years and decades and decades and decades of engraved in law racialized oppression. And then once it got taken out of the language of the law, there was still remaining systemic oppression that we haven't addressed yet. And so what I was saying, let's go back to ABC because I'm going to get on a rant and forget that what we're doing here in case something important pops up.
To push into the next.
It's interesting what's done by people. I won't say Republicans. I was talking to a conservative recently, and he told me that one of the things he watches all my videos, and thinks I do a really good job of honestly presenting stuff, but felt that the main criticism he had of me is overgeneralizing Republicans and overgeneralizing conservatives and pretending that they're all kind of like the Trumpsters when he doesn't think that they are. So I'm going to try to do a better job of clearly outlining who I'm talking about. But anyone who doesn't believe in systemic oppression, which is largely Republicans and conservatives, it's an interesting little thing they do, right? Because for years, and for a long time, this was the Democratic Party, and then there was the realignment. But for years, a large swath of the people in power and the people at large, you know, in the citizenry, outright said, we don't want to help black people get back at a even, you know, a fair footing, or we don't want to work to undo any of the clear wrongs that were done to a population based off of their race, right? We're talking about slavery, then we'll say this is a cloak term, like a umbrella term, I should say. Jim Crow, right? The actual laws. After those were repealed, there was a lot of people who were like, no, we don't want to do anything to walk back the damage that was done from that. And they said that for long enough. And then eventually they started saying, I mean, listen, back then I would have had no problem with helping them out, but it's been so long. Like, why are we still talking about Jim Crow? You know, you hear a lot of people say, oh my gosh, like America already is a country of equality of opportunity. People need to stop complaining. Slavery was so long ago. People say that, right? You hear that a lot. But we never meaningfully addressed the problems that were implemented into our, implemented into our society, knowingly or unknowingly, during that time. Okay, but I need people to understand something. You don't have to be that passionate about racial equality. I think you should, but you don't have to believe. That's not the end of the end of my sentence is you don't have to. I think you should. Do care about it. But if you don't, you can still be a progressive. No, you can't. You can still believe in some of the progressive economic policies that I'm advocating for, okay? That's what I'm trying to say. Because all progressives are saying, and this is, I was talking to this conservative, and he said, like, I'm good with helping out poor people. I just think that we don't always have to make it about race. Because it feels like they just don't like white people. Which, of course, to a progressive is like, what? No, of course not. We just recognize that for all these historical reasons, and even current reasons, definitely current reasons, this one population of people of a certain race is affected by poverty at a higher rate because of wrongs of our country and the management of it, etc. So we recognize that. That's not about pushing white people down. That's just about recognizing a problem that's there and wanting to fix it. Wow, I'm going to read that comment in a second. But if you don't want to think about it in that way, just think, we're just trying to ameliorate poverty. Like, we're trying to address the problem of poverty. And for us, a lot of it, we can recognize, like, wait, why? Why are black people in poverty at such a higher rate? Like, what is that, right? It can't just be anything to do, it can't be anything to do with the fact that they're black, because that would assume there's some sort of racial superiority, which there's just not. And oh guys, I wish everyone could understand this. It would be so easy to get stuff done in our country. It's but there's so much propaganda. Like, I can't get through. This is what makes me sad whenever I make videos, is like, I know what I'm saying is correct a lot of times and based out of truth, but then I know that so many people are going to watch it who don't have my political views and just think, oh, he's just a liberal, and not even listen to what I have to say. But continuing on with what I was saying, most people recognize that, like, poverty is something, unless you're like completely against all government programs, do you not believe in like funding education and stuff? Maybe not. But if you're anything other than that, like, most people agree we should try to better the lives of those who are at the very, very bottom of our economic ladder. And that's all we're saying. And it just so happens, because of the racialized elements, we're not making it racial. We're not obsessed with talking about race. It's just a very prevalent part of, like, an undeniable part when you analyze why certain groups are socioeconomically where they are, why there's these trends that we can pick up on clearly with people's economic outcomes. It's just a fact. So you have to see that it has to do with systemic racism and racialized oppression historically. So What if you just hate that idea? I don't know. There's poor white people too. True, there is, and we should help them as well. That's why we need universal health care. We're going to help all the people. And then the only area that you're actually singling out, like black people, for example, and this is where people get really weird, is like affirmative action stuff, you know? No, but you're taking a white person's spot because you're having a certain amount of black people that a university, whatever it is. And this is kind of leads me nice to a comment that came in. Who is this?
By Russia's war and the domino effects.
She's not giving up. Did we miss the Democratic responses or something, y'all? Interesting. Someone said, unfortunately, poverty and systemic racism are linked. Exactly. But 1927 Sue said, when my neighborhood was developed in the 1930s, no one could sell their house to any black people, and that was in Wisconsin. And so that's the 1930s, and this is, people are like, it's so long ago. One person's lifetime ago, there was outright, like that right there, complete racial antagonism that was allowed on a mass scale like that. We saw redlining, and what ends up happening is you force, like she's talking about there, people, just because of the certain visual temperature, I can't come up with a cool way, because of the way that they look, the color of their skin, you force them into certain communities. You don't allow them to have certain opportunities. And then you wait 50, 100 years. And even though, yes, tons of black people have started in poverty and made it out amazing, but on a large scale, we've never addressed those issues that were made back then, that were explicit. And then you say, that was so long ago. You don't. But we're still seeing certain communities. So back to the affirmative action thing, does it not make sense in your brain? Like, okay, one of the quickest ways we could get some of these issues kind of evened out. I'm trying to see. That doesn't look like anybody we need to listen to. Is to afford extra opportunities based off their proportional standing in the U.S. population. Give them extra opportunities compared to that, so the affirmative action stuff, and then that will allow for a little bit of some reparations to be done to all of the. We're never gonna even out the bad to the good, ever. But while I get that in the moment it feels weird, like, wait, why does that person get into college and I don't, even though whatever, I feel like I have just as good of a resume. And it's because for the longest time, and still now, as we've talked about with, this is two amazing things you have to remember. Studies have been done. We've all heard these ones. Exact same resume you send in with a white sounding name compared to a black sounding name. And the white sounding name gets called in for interviews. The black sounding names don't. So things are still going on. We were talking about historical, but still now. But then also, they did a study. Same exact house. They put pictures of a white family around. Have someone to come in to appraise the house. So tell you how much the house should cost. Or how much you can sell it for. And then you do the exact same house, have appraisers come in. They did this on a large scale, and put pictures of black families in the house. And it was like, I wish I can probably pull it up. It was like more than 100,000. It was tons of money more that they appraised the house at for the exact same house that has a white family in it. So my point in saying all this is there is real systemic racism, and the historical racialized oppression that happened has left tons of deep wounds in the fabric of our society that leaves communities way worse off. But if you don't like thinking about the world the way that it is, that's a little bit sassy. I'm just saying, if it makes you uncomfortable, because I'm just basing this off the conversation I had with my conservative friend, then don't. Just think about it in terms of poverty. And then maybe we'll get you over to seeing the reality of systemic oppression as it pertains to race. But you're right, your instinct of like, there's poor white people too. That's true. There is, and we want to help them as well. The reason, and this is the critical race theory thing, right? People say, let me see. Okay, I'm going to keep going after this. 62% of the vote is in on the race between Jessica Cisneros and Henry Cuellar. Excuse me. 51% Jessica Cisneros. 43. He's going down. 43.9% of the vote goes to Henry Cuellar. 62% of the vote is in right now. So, looking good. I'll show this on the screen actually in a second here, because more votes are coming in as we speak. Oh, Henry Cuellar just got a big boost. All right, we'll check that here in a second. Their opportunities for generational wealth was prevented. Exactly. And that's one of the most, is a huge indicator for your life outcome, is the generational wealth that you are born into. And so it's real, guys. We took away the ability for a group of people based off the color of their skin to build generational wealth. And then we tossed them in and said, okay, now we're all equal, because we took out the laws that said y'all were less than us. And that's it. Sorry about that. But in any just society, after wrecking a population's ability to build generational wealth, you'd give them a little assist. The least that you could do for doing that is just give them a little assist. And we didn't do that. And then now we've gotten to 2022. And we've done little versions of it. But now we got to 2022, and a whole bunch of the country says, that was so long ago. Why are y'all still talking about slavery? That was so long ago. Jim Crow? My God. But it doesn't matter if we're 500 years from now. If we still didn't do anything to address it, it should still be addressed, right? Because that's like one of the things with politics that's upsetting is politicians make promises. They don't follow through. The country continues with problems it had. And then you say, hey, what if we did those things that the politicians have been promising, but like actually did them? And then the critics of you say, people have been saying we have been advocating for those things forever, and look how that turned out. It's like, yeah, but they didn't actually do it. That happens so much. Oh, kills me. Anyways, okay, let's see. And again, some people hear what I'm saying and say, oh, so you think that everyone should be equal and have the same amount of money? You guys, talking to some people makes me so upset. That's what I hear coming out of their. No, I'm kidding. I love talking to people, even if they disagree. No, people will succeed at different levels. That's fine, right? We just want to set up a society where no one's has like the entire weight of hundreds of years of oppression on them, and then we're like, hey, but technically there's like a few people who'd figured it out, so you could too. And the other thing, oh, this is so important. Please, if you're a conservative watching this, so important. I would bang my desk, but I don't want to. I don't want to shake my everything, Mike. Why is there no responses? What the heck happened, y'all? Is this a response?
The inspiration that Ukrainians.
This is so important. People hear what I'm saying as well, and they say, why are you trying to convince people to be victims and discouraging them from taking control of their own situation and trying to succeed? Not what we're trying to do. Listen up, everyone. No matter what your circumstances are, you absolutely should work your tail off to succeed. Personal responsibility, all that stuff. Of course, everyone should try to do the best they can do in life. Absolutely. And the responsibility of a government is not to sit on their booties and be like, everybody, announcement of the day, be better. Personal responsibility. You can do it. Right? The government is supposed to identify broad issues and see how they can address them at a system level. As an individual, like a parent should not tell their child, hey, you're sort of oppressed. Don't try, right? Of course. I mean, you can teach about systemic oppression, all that type of stuff, but also be like, hey, but you can succeed, work hard, try to do well in school, all those things, okay? But what a good, effective government is supposed to do is recognize broad issues in society. So when you see, why is it that we can very accurately, statistically predict the outcomes economically of people based on the zip code they're born into? Why is that? Maybe there's root causes in communities, so the zip codes that they're in, that are leading to those things and making it very difficult for you to be an outlier. Then you address those root problems and you elevate and you improve on a system level and on a broad society level the well-being of your citizens. You feel me? My ears hurt, guys, from these headphones. I guess I'm not listening to anything. Let me read some comments. Yes, they should, but the government needs to make the starting line in the same place. And, not really. Sort of. I get what you're saying, but not really. Even in an awesome society, there's going to be some people whose parents did well, and, you start with a little bit more money than I do. But it's about you give everybody a reasonable chance at success, and the bottom of your society still has some level of decency and quality of life, right? And you squeeze a little bit or a good bit the gap between the very top and the very bottom. It could be closer, is what I mean. Then absolutely, I'm with you. Yes. Bible Belt here in Tennessee, Long Island, my birth home, surrounded by Trumpism here. Wow, that's the life. Yeah. So I don't know. Reach out to your Trumpsters and your right wing sters and just try to explain. Like, get excited. No, critical race theory isn't going to end the world. I don't know. Can we get through to people? Who knows? I want to believe it. Y'all see my videos. I pretend like I can get through to people. My dream is that someone will reach out and just be like, hey, I was all the way in the Trump train. Like, I was the one shoveling the coal into the engine of the Trump train. Yeah, trains have, yeah. Oh, here we go. Oh, that's coming up. Okay. And I watched your videos and was like, hey, that's kind of reasonable. And then I watched more and was like, hey, I could get on board with this. And now I'm a progressive. And I do think, guys, we have to do a better job as progressives at communicating our values and our policy prescriptions in a way that is more digestible. Because I've noticed online lefties are so bad at communicating. I sort of mean other political shows, not all of them. Definitely like individuals, the non-creators, are vicious sometimes. But then also the creators, like a lot of the content that I watch is great for me because I agree with what they believe in largely. But then if I try to analyze it from like a maybe politically neutral or like new to politics, it's like, hey, ooh, ee. Because we assume that people know too much. That's why I made the video about trans people and just like, here's what you need to know in case you have some gaps in your knowledge about trans people, trans rights, trans issues, etc. Because a lot of people, they want to be decent and they want to support people in their identities and stuff, but they just haven't been explained enough. And so then they're able to be grabbed up by conservatives who appeal purely to intuition, negative or like bad intuition or good intuition. It's just like, hey, does it kind of intuitively make sense that a man can become a woman? You kind of feel like, yeah, that makes sense. I was told my whole life that it's a man or a woman, one or the other. Can't be, you know, if you're born assigned male, you have to be man, right? And conservatives just appeal to that gut feeling that people have of like, hey, you don't want your kids taught that they're bad because they're white, right? And people are like, yeah, what? And then they have a whole propaganda storm to hit you once they get you in their net. Okay. But then progressives are over here, like, I think conservatives go too basic. Like when you watch their speeches, it's like, oh my God, how dumb do you think we are? But then progressives go way too like intellectual. Oh, we all already know the ins and outs of systemic racism. We're going to assume you know that at our starting point of our speech. Nowhere in our speech is going to explain anything. It's just going to be like, you already believe everything, and then that's where we start off, right? And I think if we did a better job of like giving context, and that's why I'm going to start any video that you see that has a title and then a straight line and then what you should know. I think that's what it is. What you need to know, what you should know, whatever it was on the trans video. I'm going to start trying to do those every once in a while. And the next one I want to do it on, I know I'm prepping one for systemic racism, but just occasionally put out videos. It's like, hey, this isn't about a specific news story. This is just, here's the context of this issue. And so the first one I ever did was the trans people. Here's why you've been misled on a lot of these trans topics. Here's the truth of what even a trans person is. A lot of people are like, I don't even get, do they think that they were born the opposite of what they were born at? Like, what is it? The whole concept. Who are they? And then what are these treatments I'm hearing about? Just kind of getting in, let's watch this, all the basics. So then once people know that information, then we can pull them over to being a progressive because they're like, okay, that makes sense. Like now I know what we're talking about here. And of course I want to support people being who they want to be, you know? All right, let's watch this.
I'm discussing the crisis in Ukraine and really highlighting the unity that he has built and his administration has built through diplomatic means to really bring everybody together. And you saw the chamber unified. You saw us waving our flags in support of the Ukrainian people. And I think really making it clear that we are doing everything we can to help Ukraine and to hold Vladimir Putin accountable for this aggression and the war that he has created on Ukraine. So yes, I think that in terms of the speech overall, the president was on fire. I think he was really channeling the strength of working people across this country, and he spoke to people in basic terms about their kitchen table issues, about cutting costs, about controlling the price of pharmaceuticals.
Yes, he spoke to them about it, but he didn't explain how he expects to get any of them done. Why did he fail to get them done in the last year, and he's going to somehow magically pull a... That was a hiccup burp. What's the phrase? Pull a bunny out of his hat? Pull a rabbit out of his hat?
Very important line that the president had around antitrust and monopolies, saying that capitalism without competition is exploitation. That is another very, very important piece of the progressive agenda, to take on these big corporate monopolies. And of course, he talked about making the tax system more fair and making the wealthiest.
Jared said, yeah, the trans one was super informative. Yay, I'm so glad. I spent so long. Whenever I want to, like when I'm covering a story, like for example, the Trump toilet paper story. How much prep do I really need to do, right? I just go, I read a number of different articles, make sure it's legitimate, see all the information, type out some notes of like what I want to say about it, and then shoot the video, edit the video, boom, right? But whenever I'm trying to say, I'm going to give you everything, the basics of everything you should know, then I get like super nervous I'm going to leave something out or not get something exactly right. That one took me so long because I was like, now I'll give you all the basics, but that means I want to look into like everything. So I know so much now about like the science behind puberty blockers, the specifics behind like what is a sex reassignment surgery and exactly how do they do it, and hormonal therapy and like all that type of stuff. It was very interesting. And then I watched a bunch of videos of just people telling their story who were trans and like what that was like growing up. Anyways, so if you haven't watched it, go look back on the channel. It's titled Trans People, and then what are these called? The straight lines? Like a slash, but straight. And it says what you should know. Definitely important.
Putting forward what the president put forward in his vision today, which is cut costs for American families, deliver for people where they need it the most. And guess what they need the most? They need their pocketbooks to be healthy and to have opportunity. So that's what I was focused on today, and I think the president did a really good job of that. And I'll also say, just on a personal note, as the mom of a transgender kid at a time when in Texas the Attorney General is trying to sue parents of trans kids, I was really touched and moved and proud that the president spoke specifically to my trans kid and to trans kids across the country.
Congresswoman, it was notable that the president talked about Build Back Better without using that term. We've been hearing for quite a while he's going to rebrand Build Back Better.
We'll listen to this while we look at results.
Anything is different right now in this moment for passing those individual pieces of legislation that he called for, what you just referenced, lowering child care costs, lowering costs of prescription drugs? Do you think anything is different right now in our politics that can actually get done?
Well, I think what the president was really focusing on was we've done a lot, but we've got a lot to do. And that, I think, is why it was important for him to talk about each of these individual pieces. And I do think that there is still a chance that we can get some of these things done. And, I haven't given up on that. But I'll also say that the Progressive Caucus will be next week releasing a list of executive actions that the president can take with his own power to do some
This is
of the
good.
things.
Yeah, there's so many things that Biden can do with executive orders that he hasn't done. 1927 Sue said he should have explained why things didn't get passed. Luke, you were so right about that. He missed an opportunity to help the midterms. Yeah, guys, the Democratic Party is so bad at politics. Oh, it's brutal. I mean, unless something changes drastically, which I hope it will, 22 midterms is not looking good for us. And that's like not even 2 full years after one of the party's supporters stormed the Capitol, and like the approval of the Republican Party was so down, and it was such a moment for Democrats to step up. And it's so upsetting. We are going to have progressives in office. We're going to be in power in the next decade. A decade is actually not that long in politics, but you get the point. In the not super, super near future, I mean, super, super far future. Not that far in the future. There you go. We're going to have progressives as the dominant force in the Democratic Party, and we're gonna be good at branding, and it's honest branding, unlike the other one. And we're going to push for positive change in the country, and we're gonna be able to do it because we're not gonna be corrupt, and we're gonna be what we've been so wishing for so long, and we've been promised that so many people are gonna be it, but we're gonna be the generation that gets it done. There's so many amazing things we can do. This is what people don't realize. First of all, a democracy is beautiful. It can be beautiful if we can get corruption out of it, which is possible. Also, a government can do amazing things for its people. Again, if you root out the corruption. And so we are going to be the generation, the political movement that shows America and the world what a functioning and progressive government can do for its people. And we're going to give people decency. We're going to, like we talked about, ameliorate those issues that have been around so long. Give people a, decent opportunity at success. And even if they fall completely on their back, the bottom that you could possibly fall into is going to be a life of basic decency. And we're going to do that. Keep the hope. We can do it. We're plucking away every single election. Progressives are winning, and we're not losing. Every single time one of our people gets into Congress, they're not getting knocked out of Congress. Because people love them. I mean, AOC dominates. Ilhan Omar dominates. Katie Porter is in a conservative district, and she dominates, and she's a progressive. Oh. I jiggled the camera, didn't I? So keep the hope, keep fighting, and keep paying attention. Get people involved. There's so many people in my life who just do not pay attention to politics. It's so important that you do. Because if we can get enough people involved and paying attention to how corrupt these people are, and then once everyone's aware, it's not going to be that difficult. You think about like great leaders in the past. When you get the awareness of the broader population, you can do amazing things because people actually have good views on a lot of things. Most people just don't pay attention. You think about like our election turnout is so low, but you talk to the average person, they're actually going to support a lot of things that we consider to be like progressive or sort of radical. So please keep paying attention and keep pushing. And all I ask is that the left needs to do a better job of mobilizing and not getting so obsessed with like inner left fighting. I don't mean inner party. I don't mean like, let's not attack's a strong word, but let's not go after corrupt centrist Democrats. We should be doing that. That's amazing. I mean, we get so caught up on the left with like attacking one another. Oh, AOC did this one thing wrong. Like, she's terrible now. Like, criticize, level-headed. Whenever the people that we usually support do things wrong, criticize them. But let's not tear ourselves apart, even on the left. Because you see the right, they come together good. And that's why they do not represent as big of the country as the left represents. They have not won the popular vote in a presidential election in 8 elections. Clearly, more people support the Democrats. But Republicans play politics better. And so we need to get better at that. And one of the things that is included in that is being able to unify with each other around certain goals and people and causes. So that was a rant. Let me go to here. All right, it's tightening up. Okay, she boosted up a little bit. No, yeah, it tightened a lot. So is this all? That's so... How is that 66% of the vote? I guess all this is just empty. 49.1% goes to Jessica so far. And then 45.9% Henry Cuellar. Yes, Luke, they need to see the bigger picture, and the blue better unite now. But we have to unite around the right people, you know, and the right causes. I followed Midas Touch for a couple years. They're great. They had a truck sign asking where is Ron Johnson when he was in Russia on 4th of July, 2020. They traveled the state. Oh, that's cool. Let's see. The Dems need to realize it a new dirty day. The days of singing Kumbaya and looking all aghast at the horrific behavior the GOP have turned to be over. They have to get tough. I totally agree. And voters love strength. When you show that you're fighting. I mean, that's all Republicans do is just fight the Democratic Party. Right now, they're just trying to do everything they can do to keep the Democrats from doing anything. Then the Democrats get in power and they're like, hey, we really want to unite with the Republicans. And again, I like the idea in theory of two parties uniting. But when... I don't like alienating people. I don't know how to say this. If you're a Republican and watching, just cut me some slack. Your party isn't trying to do anything like for the betterment of people. It isn't. Please name it. Name one thing. What? They're going to keep CRT out of schools? My heart rate's going up. Guys, you can't, like the example I wanted to give, and let me be clear. I'm not calling the Republican Party the same as Hitler's party, as the Nazi party. I'm not. I'm making a hypothetical point, okay? Bear with me. And it's not hypothetical. I'm just using a historical reference to make a point. Whenever the Nazis were in power, presumably, there was a opposition party, right? Whoever didn't support the Nazis. Okay? Ready? Think about it. Let's say in America there was a Nazi party. All right? The Democratic Party was the other party. Okay? Wait. Hold up. A lot of people say, I think we need to be moderate. What does moderate mean in their heads? Centrist. In the center. Be in the middle. Right? If there's a Nazi party and the Democratic Party, do you really think... I'm not calling... I know people are going to get turned off by this. I'm not calling Republicans the same as the Nazis. I'm not. Even though Marjorie Taylor Greene just went to a white supremacist conference. But I'm not. I'm literally not, okay? I'm actually serious. I'm not. I know so many conservatives. That's why I do this. I get scared. I don't want to make anybody sad. But is it a good thing to be moderate whenever there's one side that's Nazis and one side that's not? You would answer what? No. Okay. So now you agree with the principle of splitting the difference of two parties is not necessarily the best way to go. Huh? So now I need people to, because I know a lot of what I would consider like MSNBC Democrats, right? Kind of just center Democrats. They think AOC is a little radical. They think the Republicans are terrible. And they think Biden's kind of perfect. If you look at everything on a linear spectrum, and then you think moderate is the best way to go, you're gonna end up at some point, if one party's sliding more and more radical, bad radical, crazy racist radical, you're gonna end up being in the center of really, really bad and whatever it is, good. Okay? So at some point you have to recognize, hey, maybe you might be on the far left of a political spectrum, but that's the reasonable center, if you feel me. Sorry guys, I'm in a mood right now. I'm like all weird. Let me get professional again. Do you get, I know the people watching probably understand what I'm saying, but I just hear this so much. I was just on the phone with somebody and they said, I just feel like we need to elect more moderates because our country's so divided. That's what we've been doing forever. What if the median opinion, or even just the average opinion, was far left? You can't just split the difference between Marjorie Taylor Greene and AOC, which are not comparable. I hate when people make that comparison. I'm just saying, like, what people consider to be the far right and the far left, and then say, I'm kind of in the middle of that. Okay, y'all get the point. Sorry. Why do people do that to me? Why do they do it? And then people will say to me, hey, I know, Luke, you're like a radical, but what do you think about this? What am I radical about? You think a $15 minimum wage is radical? You think universal health care is radical? You think universal pre-K, childcare, trying to make college costs reasonable? You think not invading sovereign countries for oil is radical? What? Describe. What is radical? Why are you calling me radical? You're just thinking the most basic pea brain understanding of the world. There is a left, a right, a far right, and a far left. What if there's just a reasonable and logical, and then over here, and then a little bit less, and then a little bit less, and then a completely not reasonable, and then a like wacko? What y'all think? Jared, I do care. Makes me so mad. What's going on here? Oh, Texas voters react.
Have you got any clarity tonight from the president?
No.
That's a little problematic. Dwight, you and I were speaking earlier in terms of your barbecue business. You own Off the Bone Barbecue here in Dallas.
Right.
And some of the supply chain challenges, employment
Clarity.
challenges you've been dealing
What clarity
with.
you're gonna get?
What's your sense from the president's speech of what that's going to mean for your business in the next year?
From his speech, he spoke to both of those areas, as well as lowering the cost to drive down inflation. And that's big for as small businesses go, especially like a restaurant or whatever. The employment piece of it as well.
He also mentioned meat producers, and I know that the cost of proteins, as we were talking about earlier,
exactly.
that affects you very directly.
Exactly. That's big on our list. to drive down to get back to where we were.
Yeah. How far off do you think you are now from where you were before?
Probably 30 to 40%.
30, 40%?
Yes.
No kidding.
Right.
Wow. Cindy, let me come to you before I
kinda
have to let all
interesting.
y'all go. You mentioned some of the other social issues that the president brought up, especially because some of those were so big in terms of the Texas primaries that were today. What did you make of the president's address?
I'm hoping that those policies that he spoke about today, that they'll start trickling down to Texas, and we'll actually see some changes here coming up soon in November.
You also mentioned the impact of immigration policy for you as a small business owner as well.
As a small business owner and as a Mexican American, I think it affects a lot of families here in Texas. And, you know, we all have friends and family that are here undocumented and are willing to work and want to work, but they just don't see a pathway to legalizing themselves or having the right paperwork.
Jaime, one of the things that you mentioned several times, and I think this cut across everybody, is being able to have some clarity and to really see what the president's going to be able to do for you in the next year.
Yes, I would love to see some actionable steps. He touched on a lot of topics that I wanted to hear about, but I'd love to bring it closer to home because we're dealing.
Yes, exactly. He said a great stuff. Did not lay out how he thinks he's going to get it done. Y'all, did anyone else see the responses? Like what? I heard 4 Democratic responses. I saw 0. What the heck? Help me out here. What's going on? My ears hurt. We have a brutal 2022 coming up. I'm so scared, y'all. Imagine if we somehow kept the House and Senate. That'd be really cool. Oh no. Starts freezing up. That's not good. Let's see if any of these other ones are covering. Oh, that's what we were just watching. Just kidding. Yeah, I just think I'm trying to figure out how to say this. I think there's going to be like a flip. I don't, just to kind of give y'all hope, I don't think it's going to be this slow tick, tick, tick of progressivism. And it's like, okay, we get a tiny win and then we get a little bit bigger, tiny win, then we a little bigger, right? I think it's going to be, we get whatever, I don't know what it is, but whatever the breaking point number is of people in power, that their like influence in the government and their bully pulpit is big enough, and there's going to be a flip where enough people hear the voices of progressives where they know, now they see and they can no longer stand corrupt Democrats. Because right now, corrupt Democrats hold enough power and enough media influence to where people don't hear the voices of progressives loud enough to believe what they have to say. And so I think it's going to be a slow trickle. You know, we get Jessica Cisneros in, whatever it is. We get Nina Turner in, oh, please. And then eventually, boom, all the corrupt Democrats feel pressured enough because people are motivated enough to push on their elected representatives who aren't progressive to fall in line behind progressives because they're like, oh, wow, now we see. We want more of those ones, you know, those types of leaders and politicians. And then kind of like what the Tea Party did to the Republican Party, we'll see the Democrats, you either get elected out or you fall in line behind progressives. I really do believe that's going to happen. And it could be what I just said, enough people get in Congress, or it could be a leader. That's what I was hoping with Bernie Sanders, but whoever it is in the future, a presidential candidate who gets enough attention on these issues that people go, oh, of course I don't want my politicians taking millions of dollars in corporate PAC money. Of course that's going to cause them not to be unbiased and to serve me in the way that they should. I really do think there's going to be a turning point. It's going to be amazing to see. I think there's going to be a progressive flip one of these times, hopefully. Yeah. Same. That's what I'm hoping for as well. Okay, so I don't know what ever happened to the Republic or the Democratic. I probably just missed them. They weren't playing it on these channels, I guess. Sorry about that. If anything's super notable, I'll cover it on a video. So giving you context, tomorrow I think I'm going to do a video on like one of my normal formatted videos that's pre-recorded and edited and stuff on Trump's CPAC speech. And then Thursday, probably another Russia-Ukraine update because I haven't done one like formally. I've been doing live streams, but I haven't done one formally in a while. And then I'll probably be releasing clips from live streams, but I'm going to still try to do one like well-produced video per weekday. Doing my best. Also working in school and blah, blah, blah. But then Friday, I don't know what I'll do. But yeah, I think Trump's speech tomorrow. Another update on Russia-Ukraine. Maybe I'll do that. Systemic racism. We'll see. It just depends on what stories come out. So we'll see. I was hoping to get to report on the announcement of who wins this race, but I have some school to turn in before 11:59 p.m. Central Time. So an hour from now that I haven't started. So I'm going to jump off and do that. But let's see if there's any last comments. Oh yeah, I saw Mea Culpa. Listen to a couple of those things. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Of course, go watch my other videos, any of the ones you haven't watched. Let me know how you feel about live streaming. Obviously, I just kind of started doing that. I enjoy it because it was Lauren Boebert yelling during the speech. Okay. I enjoy it because I can get, hop on and just interact with y'all rather than having to do the hours and hours of work for one video and not get to directly interact with you. Of course, over comments, yes, but this is fun because I get to live kind of chat with y'all and go through stuff kind of less prepared, which is fun. But just keep with your feedback. It helps me a ton. All this is very new, as I've said many times, so I value y'all's opinions. All right, I'm peacing out. Have a wonderful night, and let's hope that Justice Cisneros can pull through. And my computer is going to be super slow turning off the live stream, so there you go. Peace.